Stated so briefly, this may sound absurdly simple. Well, I didn't state it so briefly, but it's not. It's an approach which we have found extremely potent in the field of psychotherapy. It is the most effective agent we know for altering the basic personality structure of an individual and improving his relationships and his communications with others. If I can listen to what he can tell me, if I can understand how it seems to him, if I can see its personal meaning for him, if I can sense the emotional flavor which it has for him, then I will be releasing potent forces of change in him. Well, so you can imagine, like, your brain is always trying to figure things out. Well, let's extend that a bit. It's not just your brain, it's your psychophysiology. It's your whole body is trying to figure things out, right? And you can't just think about it as a logical and mental process. Like, your emotions they're evaluative processes. They're trying to give you information, but they're not very articulate. You know, it's like you come home and you're all angry and you're touchy and your partner says something that's, you know, pretty mundane and you just explode. It's like, well, they say to you, why are you like that? And they say, well, I hate it when your boots are in the way of the door. It's like, oh, that's why you're having a fit, is it? Because the boots are, well, they're always there. It's like, you can be sure that there's a big mess underneath that. And it's going to be hard to approach that person because angry people are also kind of, you know, they're kind of, well, they're irritable for sure, but they also have this kind of shell on them that is touchy. They're touchy. So if you touch them, you know, they'll get irritated at you. And so, if you mirror that, if you're listening to them and watching them, then they can start to figure out that they're angry and that maybe they're more angry than the situation demands. And if you listen to them, be angry for a while, which is very annoying, right? Because maybe they'll be angry at you. Then maybe they'll calm down and they'll start to differentiate that emotion into articulated statements. It's like, well, I had a really terrible day at work. Well, what was so terrible about it? Then they'll tell you a little story. And then they'll say, well, that's happening all the time. And then you ask them about that. And then they say, well, my boss is unreasonable in his demands. And so then you ask them about that. And you find out that the person either has a tyrant for a boss, because sometimes that happens, right? A real bully. And then the answer to why they're mad about the shoes is because they should change jobs. Right? Or maybe you find out that, well, they have no idea how to say no to their boss. They just say yes no matter what he or she says. And that means they're too agreeable. And then maybe you have to figure out how they can learn how to say no and how they have to sort of check with their resentment to figure out when they're being taken advantage of. It's like, it's very, very complicated. And it's no wonder people want to avoid it. But, you know, that's another sort of truism. If someone's overreacting, well, they're not reacting to that thing. They're reacting to that thing plus a whole bunch of things that are related to that thing, sort of. And they don't know what it is. And so then, if you listen to them, and they talk about it, they're actually thinking. Because what you might think, when you're talking, is that you think, and then you say what you think. And so you don't have to talk, you could just think. But that isn't right. Most people don't really think. Like they don't sit down and meditate and like think logically through a whole sequence of problems. The thoughts sort of appear in their heads, you know, spontaneously. Sort of like a reverie, but they're not philosophers. You know, they don't have that kind of command of the language. And so then when they're talking to you, they're actually thinking. They're thinking out loud. And for all we know, maybe thinking is more effective when you say it out loud, because maybe I'm wired up so that my brain assumes that if I'm willing to tell it to you, to make it public, that it's more true than those things I'd like to keep to myself. And so one of the things you're doing in a psychotherapeutic session is you're just letting the person talk. And, you know, I have clients, they don't want me to do anything for the hour that I'm with them except shut up and listen. And maybe now and then I can just clarify something. I have one client in particular who's very isolated, socially isolated. And this person has come to see me for a long time. And they just want to, this person comes every 2 weeks. And what they want to do is talk about the last 2 weeks. And they want me to listen, and so I have to be engaged, right? I'm listening, and that's a communicative process, listening, right? Because your face is changing, and you're nodding, and you know you're reacting. So you're in the communication, but this person just wants to talk, and then they sort themselves out, you know, and figure out what it is they're upset about, and then that's good, and they can go off and operate in the world for 2 weeks. And that's all just listening. Well, just listening. Listening is hard, and people aren't taught how to do it.